the F5 Local Traffic Manager iRules configuration. Now we've got some of our concepts down, we got our ideas about the when, if, and the then. Now let's go ahead and pick a few things and try them out. You know, we have these powers, let's use them. So let's go ahead and play around a little bit with some of the iRules and some stuff that we can do. And really kind of want to play around in terms of redirecting things to places where, you know, may not be normal. So we're going to say, you know, we got some clients, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Sorry, just picking numbers here. And I want to pick one of them and redirect it to a different place. So what I'm going to do is we'll do our virtual server number 1. I don't remember what the exact name of it is. We'll have to look that up in there. But that one, as I recall, was all my port 80. Okay, so port 80 all the way across, all the way through, and dealt with 10 of my servers back here. But it did them in a priority manner. Okay, so I had, we had to host, 11 through 20, and it did 18 through 21st. Then it would do, I believe, 15 through 17. Maybe it was 14 through 17. But anyway, and the other one, so we'll just say 11 to 14, is last. And it would only do this in terms of the backup portion. So if something here went unavailable, then these would be active. And only if these were unavailable, then these would be active. So basically, I shouldn't see anything down here. But we're going to go ahead and create an iRule that basically will take one of our hosts and say use 11. Now, everybody else can use the pool as normal and do its standard load balancing and all that stuff, but let's go ahead and make them use pool 11 or pool member number 11. Okay? So interesting thing when we do this. Okay, so again, let's think through the logic. We've got a couple different pieces to it. Remember, we have the event, we have the if or condition, and then we have the then or the action. So what kinds of things am I going to list on here? So my event is at what point? Well, yeah, probably the client accepted would be the good port for it. Okay, so let's do that. So client accepted. And then what am I measuring on? Okay, so I'm doing my IP address. All right, so and interestingly enough, the IP address is kind of a meta field, if you will, because there's more than one part to it. So I do have an IP adder, but I also have an IP remote adder. And that's more specifically what it is that we're trying to match in there. Alright, so my then, what's going to happen afterwards? Well, I want to go to a specific pool member. So I'll have my pool name, which is going to be pool 1, and then member IP address. And I think I'm going to put port number in there also. Now, one bad thing about iRules is as you go through them, you're going to kind of have to either, well, I guess, memorize what you're doing. I suppose that's always one option. As you get good at these and do several of them, that may be easy. Otherwise, you're going to have documentation open. Okay, because there is no like context-sensitive help or anything like that going on, so you really don't have a whole lot of options other than playing around with these kind of things. Okay, so from that standpoint, keep in mind iRules are there. We'll go ahead and see a couple of them as we get into the ADC. Take a look at a couple of them just to kind of get an idea for context and other kind of options and things that we may have, but we'll start with the basics and start with some kind of simple stuff and play around a little bit, because that's, you know, what half the fun of it is. So let's go ahead and dive on to our ADC and go from there. Alright, and we'll go ahead and log in and see where we're at for these things in here. And everything that we're going to do is going to be around our iRules. Okay, so local traffic, you can go to my iRules here, and notice that there are a number of them built in. Okay, all of 14. So we can take a look at any of them you want to on here and kind of see what types of things go on for my context. So let's pick, that's my exchange support here. That might be a little bit more than what we want. As you can see, they can be big and long. Okay, so let me go ahead and go back. Let's pick something smaller. Actually, I don't know if any of them are going to be smaller. I better redirect. Well, we can talk through this one. There we go. Okay, so on this particular one, this is going to redirect into HTTPS. So when the HTTP request right here, move this out of the way. So here's my when. So here's my event that's going to happen, the HTTP request. And essentially, I go straight to a then. Okay, there's no particular if condition right here or anything else. It's if anything. But I'm going to redirect. So here's my action that I'm doing right here. And where I'm going to. So HTTPS. But then I do have information that will pull things out. Okay, so it tells me that I'm going to get the field for the HTTP host. That would be the host name going on in there. And then, colon if there's going to be that information to it, if there's a port number at all. And afterwards, it'll be the URI. Okay, so you got to remember that a URL that we're all used to seeing equals host plus URI, Uniform Resource Information, okay, or identifier, depending on whose definition you like. So that's going to be one of the pieces in there. But anyway, we're rebuilding the part to it, essentially just adding the S right there. Now, we'd have to do a number of things, and honestly, I'm not going to apply this one in our case right here, mostly because I don't have I don't have the SSL stuff set up on the web servers, nor do I have it all configured on the virtual servers. So we really haven't done any of that, so there's really not much point in doing it. But we get the idea right here that we can see what one of the iRules happens to look like. This definition signature down here, we don't need to worry about that. That just says that it's signed by F5. Okay, so clear this off, and if we go back, you'll notice right here, all these have a certificate to them that they're certified by F5 as far as being one of theirs. So it's kind of a blessed iRule, if you will. Anything that we create will not show this verification portion in there. Let's see if we can do one other one. Yeah, that's still going to go through a whole lot of things. Okay, so we won't do too much with it. But on the other hand, I do want to go ahead and create something. Okay, so we can say, let's see, host 4 to server 11. Okay, good enough name for it. Now, what we're going to do on here, and again, we kind of look at what it is that we're pulling and what it is that we're doing. So when, if I can type, client accepted, okay, now in this case, I'm going to put an if statement right here because it really does make a difference as far as that goes. Okay? So IP, : adder, and then inside of it, the remote address, equals. Now, what were our client's IP addresses again? Yeah, so those were all 192.168.201, and host 4 should be .4. Okay, so we have that, close the bracket, open the bracket, and then what I'm going to do with it is tell it pool, pool -1, and then what member. So specifically to member 11, port 80. Alright, so that's perfectly cool. So close that, go ahead and say else, pool -1. Alright, so that should pretty much end it in there. It tells me that if my IP address is equal to 192.168.201.4, then send it to this specific member right here. Otherwise, just do your normal load balancing in pool 1, which by default I believe should be 18, 19, and 20. So we'll click finished on this. It'll go through and parse it all. Okay, everything is perfectly cool in the syntax. Notice right here there is no verification or anything like that. Alright, so perfectly fine. Now, next thing we do is go into our virtual server. Okay, virtual server list, perfectly fine. Let's see, virtual server 1 right here. And in resources is where I'm going to have stuff. Okay, so this is where I'll put my iRules and everything else like that in there. Not going to worry about that right this second. Okay, so just kind of holding on that. But it tells me that I am pool 1, so I did do that part right. Now I want to check on my pool list real quick for pool 1 and go to members. And in here it kind of tells me what's going to be going on. So again, look at my priority groups that I have. And so 18 and 19 and 20 are the highest priority. 16 by itself, then 15 and 14 and 13, okay, and then 12 and 11. All right, so I had more groups than I thought that I remembered having. But in any event, bottom line is that unless there's a lot of failures, in less than 3 of these things going on, so a lot of failures in here, I shouldn't be seeing node 11 at all. Okay, not in pool 1 anyway. So that gives me my indication for where I'm at. So let's check out our hosts and see what some of them are coming up with right now. Alright, so on host 2, where am I at? 192, 68, 201, 101, alright, so that's cool. So if I go in there, I'm on number 18. Okay, we'll see where I rotate around to. Okay, 18, 19, we may see a 20 in there as it kind of cycles through things. So I understand where I'm at. And get out of here, let's go down to host 4. I should do the same thing. Yep. 92, 168, 101, okay. So 19, 20, 19, 20. Okay, so we're seeing all this information right here. I'm seeing exactly what I expect to see, that it's rotating through the pool as it should. Okay, perfectly cool. So, now, let's go back and add this iRule and make it actually work. Okay. So we said this was in virtual server, so our virtual server list, go to virtual server number 1 right here, and it'll be under resources. So under my iRules, I just click on the manage button in order to turn these on here, and I can select from any of the iRules that I have. Okay, so all the other ones built into the system, of course, except for this. So host 4 to server 11. All right, so I'm going to have that in there. That's the way that it's going to work. Perfectly cool with that. All right. And I can go ahead and say finish. This is the only one that I'm put on there right now, but it's going to be one of those things. Alright, so as we get through here, now this is going to be kind of the more interesting part. So we've applied this. It is active in the iRules right now, so we can go back to the host and see what difference we're going to have. Okay, I'll go ahead and start out again with a different host. So this is host number 3. And 2, oops. 101, alright. So we got that on there. So port 19, port 18, port 20. So rotating through the pool like I expect to. Perfectly fine. And go out to host number 4 right now. Alright, so we showed this still up for where we were before at host 20. Now if I refresh, I get number 11. Nobody else is going to get this. And every time I refresh, I'm still going to get that same one because that's what the iRule said. So let's go to a different host. There's number 5 on here. And we'll type the, put the URL in there. Alright, where's my cursor? There we go. There we go. Alright, so again, port 20, port 18, port 20. So 18, 19, 20 is where I should exactly be on there. That's where I expect to actually be. Okay? Except for number 4. And that's going to be why we're doing that. Okay? So we see how we're at as far as what that rule did and where we're at with it and why that's going to be in there. So let's do something a little bit different. Okay, so we already have it where default is pool 1. Host 4 is node 11. So let's do something. We'll say that host 3 is going to get pool 3. Which will be completely different in terms of not only the host that it's using, I believe that was 15 through 18 if I remember, but also the port number, because it'll get redirected to the higher ports, the 8080 or 8000, whatever we happen to be using on there. Something completely out of the ordinary that wouldn't normally be seen and is going to be invisible as far as what the clients are concerned. Okay? So we'll also see where we can have multiple iRules going on, but remember to follow the logic. Okay? Because in this particular one that we didn't treat anything with the default. We had an if, then, and an else. So if host 4, then node 11, else pool 1. So if I create a new rule and tell host 3 to go to pool 3, where am I going to do it when I've got logic that says this? And that's kind of the catchy part. I'm going to have to do it up here. And most importantly, I'm going to have to not have an else statement in my next iRule. Because otherwise we're going to start overriding the logic. You got to remember, it's going to follow them in order. If we remembered seeing on that page where the iRule was, you can move up and move down. But with that, I have to start thinking through all of the logic that I'm actually going to apply in here. So let's go ahead and play with that and see what we can do. Alright, so we go back to my iRules. iRule list right here. I'm going to create another one. That's perfectly fine. And we'll do the same type of thing on here. So let's see, we'll do host 3 to pool 3. Okay. When client accepted, so same portion on here. And then if, and we'll do the same type of matching. So IP, : adder, nope, did not do my square bracket. I have to have that. Yeah, there's a lot of the context, by the way, with square brackets and curly brackets that is very important, and the system will kind of yell at you about it if you don't do it correctly, but that's one where you'll definitely have to get used to it for moving around. So remote adder equals 2.168.201.3. All right, so there's my end of that. Wrong bracket. End that, begin that. Then I want to go to pool 3. Alright, and then my ending brackets. So notice again there's no else here. So everything else, if it falls out the bottom, goes to what the default happens to be, or it goes to an else that you list in there. So that's why I said we got to be careful of our logic. So finished right here. That's perfectly fine. Let me go back into my virtual server. And virtual server number 1 again. Resources. Manage my iRules. And here's host 3. Okay, so it's going to put it on the bottom real quick. This is not going to work for me. Now we can try this, just in case we want to. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. So we've got both of them in there, perfectly fine. I'm going to go back over to our hosts now. Okay, so let's go over here to host 3 now. And go ahead and get on. And say refresh on this. Huh, it is taking it. Oh, so there's a surprise. I did not expect this to happen, because it should have been doing them in order, and it was doing it at the bottom. Interesting stuff. So even I have learned something new today. But as a general rule, I would not count on this happening. Most likely it was just from a specific match for it, but I would be very careful with doing that. But notice that I am on virtual server from pool number 3 anyway. At the higher ports is where I'm ending up at. If I go back to other servers, so number 4 on here, I'm still going to be on 11. Okay, so that part hasn't changed. And if I go over to 5, and everybody else in this matter, where are we at? There we are. Alright, we'll still rotate between 18, 19, and 20. Alright, so that's kind of the rule of it, is we go through our iRules, we can set up the different things, we can have multiple on there. I am kind of bummed that this broke my logic the way that I was doing this, but my experience in the past has been that we have to be careful with the logic and the order that we put rules in. So I would still kind of stress that as being important, even though this system has proved me wrong right here. Yeah, I'm just not very trusting with it. So your mileage can vary. Do what you want to with that, but I would just kind of take that with a grain of salt as far as what we're doing. But we have successfully changed things around where different hosts now go to completely different places, one of which was in a pool that was defined there. The other one was in a pool not even defined on that virtual server. So we have lots of control that we can do over the entire packet flow going through here. So iRules, very powerful stuff, great things to do, take a lot of getting used to, or a lot of potential for error in that, but very powerful to get us to be able to do whatever we want to. All right, so we have done some iRules config on here and shown, well, really quite a few things as far as going ahead and creating them within the, the local traffic and iRules, and then of course applying them to the virtual server. We'll call it under resources. We did talk about having multiple ones on there, even despite the fact that the little silly system chose to prove me wrong about the ordering, but I would still advise, be careful on the order. If nothing else, logic is important. I can't stress that one enough. But again, iRules give us lots of control over the entire data flow. This is a data plane operation that we're doing here, but all sorts of control over the things that we can do. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.